Imagine for a second that you are standing in the immediate aftermath of a massive emergency.
Right, like a blazing structure fire downtown, or maybe the chaotic wake of a natural disaster.
Exactly. And there are sirens echoing everywhere, smoke is just thick in the air, and you've got those flashing red lights painting all the surrounding buildings. Naturally, your eyes are drawn right to the action.
Yeah, you're thinking about the victims, the people being pulled from the rubble, the lives being saved.
Right. But I want you to look past the front line for just a moment. Look, like behind the fire engines, just outside the hot zone.
Because there is this entirely different hidden operation happening right there.
Yeah, completely out of the public eye. And it begs this really crucial question. Who is rescuing the rescuers?
It's the unseen lifeline of every major crisis, really. I mean, we are asking everyday individuals to sprint into environments that human biology is explicitly designed to run away from.
Run away from as fast as possible.
Exactly. And to survive that, the mechanisms we use to keep them alive, to keep their bodies functioning under unimaginable stress, they have to be incredibly complex.
So if human biology is designed to flee those environments, then the mission of this deep dive is to figure out how we, well, force it to stay, fight, and survive.
Which is no small feat.
Definitely not.
Protecting those who protect us. The Fire Rehab Podcast.
We are exploring the hidden, highly structured world of emergency scene rehabilitation, or rehab for short.
Yeah, and we're pulling our insights today from a really phenomenal source. It's called Advancing Emergency Scene Rehabilitation, a comprehensive guide written by Patrick Shay and published by the Fire Rehab Foundation.
It's a great read. We're going to decode the extreme physiological toll first responders endure, the fascinating technology and global strategies deployed to keep them functioning, and the really complex logistical and ethical dilemmas involved in treating the people whose entire job is to treat you.
Because when we talk about emergency response, we so often default to focusing on the operational tactics.
For sure. The massive hoses, the towering ladders.
The jaws of life cutting through steel, right? But the most valuable and frankly the most vulnerable piece of equipment on any emergency scene is the human body itself.
Yeah.
The medical, operational, and psychological layers of keeping that body running are ultimately what determine whether a crisis is managed or whether it spirals into a secondary tragedy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can understand the solutions and the technology, we have to understand the sheer biological trauma these responders are willingly subjecting themselves to.
It's intense.
Think about it like a high-performance car engine. You wouldn't take a sports car, redline the engine for 4 hours straight in a dusty, like 500-degree oven.
Right.
And then just park it in the garage without letting it cool down, checking the oil, or topping off the coolant.
No, the engine would completely seize up.
Exactly. It would be ruined. But structurally, that is essentially what the emergency services industry historically did with first responders.
That analogy hits right at the core of the problem. When a responder enters a hot zone, say a burning building, their body undergoes this immediate massive stress response.
Fight or flight.
Exactly. The sympathetic nervous system kicks into absolute overdrive. We are talking about a massive flood of adrenaline and cortisol.
That's total chemical dump.
Yeah, it's the body's primitive fight-or-flight mechanism trying to force survival. To facilitate that, the heart rate skyrockets to pump oxygen, blood pressure surges, and respiratory rates climb drastically.
And they are doing all of this while wrapped in incredibly heavy personal protective equipment, their PPE.
Which is a huge factor.
Right, because this isn't just a heavy winter coat. We are talking about 40 to 70 pounds of gear.
Wow.
Yeah, and they are navigating uneven terrain, climbing stairs, maybe crawling over unstable, collapsed floors, all while completely surrounded by toxic chemicals, thick black smoke, and extreme ambient temperatures.
And that gear, it actually presents a biological paradox.
How so?
Well, the specialized fabric of turnout gear is designed to keep the lethal external fire out. But the exact mechanism that prevents heat from penetrating also means it traps all the internally generated body heat in.
Oh, man. So it's a two-way barrier.
Right. So the responder's core temperature begins to climb rapidly. The body tries to cool itself by sweating, but because the gear is heavily insulated and moisture
That
resistant.
sweat can't evaporate.
Exactly. So the primary cooling mechanism completely fails.
If the body's primary cooling mechanism fails, the heart has to work even harder, right? I mean, it's trying to push blood to the surface of the skin to radiate heat away, but the skin is covered in thermal insulation.
Spot on. The cardiovascular strain of operating in high heat with heavy gear forces the heart to work at absolute maximum capacity just to pump blood to the skin.
That sounds terrifying.
It really is.
But-
And while that initial adrenaline dump we mentioned is useful for immediate survival, sustaining it is disastrous.
Because of the cortisol.
Yeah. Cortisol, for instance, starts suppressing the immune system when it's elevated for long periods. If you ignore these biological warning signs, it leads directly to musculoskeletal injuries, heat exhaustion, and severe cardiovascular disease.
Right.
In fact, sudden cardiac events like heart attacks are a leading cause of line-of-duty deaths for firefighters.
Which naturally brings up a glaring historical barrier here, the stigma.
Oh, the stigma is huge.
Right, because if the physical toll is so obvious and the risk of a heart attack is so high, why have responders historically been so resistant to asking for help or taking a break?
It comes down to a deeply ingrained operational culture. The culture of emergency response is built on this foundation of toughness, resilience, and absolute self-reliance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
For decades, the mindset, often referred to as eating smoke, was that you simply do not stop until the job is done.
Wow. Eating smoke.
Yeah. Utilizing a rehab sector, sitting down, allowing someone to take off your gear, it was historically viewed by some veterans as a sign of weakness.
So they just push through it.
Yeah. Exactly. Responders feared being labeled as unfit for duty, or they simply prioritized the immediate, urgent tasks of saving lives over their own well-being. Overcoming that psychological stigma and normalizing rehab as a critical operational necessity rather than a personal failing, well, it's been a monumental hurdle in modern emergency management.
Wait, I want to push back on the complexity of this for a second.
Sure.
When you say utilizing a rehab sector,
Yeah.
isn't rehab just like sitting down in a folding chair near the fire engines with a bottle of water?
No, not at all.
Because why does this require a dedicated rehab officer and a full medical triage team? I mean, we've all seen footage on the news of firefighters just sitting on the bumper of a fire truck drinking a sports drink.
I get why you'd think that. It's a really common misconception, but modern rehab is so much more than a water break on a bumper. What's fascinating here is that it is a highly structured, proactive medical triage operation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The fundamental goal is to prevent a responder from becoming a patient themselves. When a responder exits the hot zone today, they don't just wander off and sit anywhere.
Right.
They are directed into a secure, designated rehab area that is formally integrated into the incident command system. It's a highly controlled environment.
And the physical monitoring they undergo in that environment is actually really intense. I remember for the source material, it outlines very strict vital sign parameters that absolutely have to be met before a responder is allowed back into the fight.
Very strict.
The medical team is looking for a heart rate between 60 and 100 beats per minute, blood pressure around 120/80, and their oxygen saturation, the SpO2 levels, between 95 and 100%.
Right. And if they don't meet those,
Yeah, if you are sitting in that chair and your heart rate is still 130 after 20 minutes of rest, you don't go back in. Your day is over.
and that strict monitoring is crucial because medical personnel are specifically trained to spot the subtle physiological differences between heat exhaustion and heat stroke.
Which are very different.
A life or death distinction, actually. And a firefighter hopped up on adrenaline might not notice it in themselves. Heat exhaustion presents with profuse sweating, extreme fatigue, and cool, clammy skin.
Okay.
It's the body struggling but still trying to regulate its temperature. It's serious but generally manageable with rest and active cooling.
But heat stroke is a whole different beast.
Oh, absolutely.
That's when the body's internal thermostat completely breaks. The skin becomes dry and flushed because the body has literally run out of fluid and stopped sweating entirely.
Yeah, that's when it gets really dangerous.
Their core temperature spikes over 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius. And at that temperature, cellular proteins actually begin to break down.
Right.
The brain starts to misfire, which is why you see altered mental states, confusion, or even combativeness. That requires immediate, aggressive, life-saving medical intervention.
This is why the folding chair and water bottle idea is actually dangerous. Chugging water isn't enough when you've pushed the body that far. In some cases, it can cause further issues if you aren't replacing what the body is actually losing.
Because of the electrolytes.
Exactly. True rehab involves specific nutritional mechanics. Responders need electrolyte solutions to replace the massive amounts of sodium and potassium they've sweat out.
Right, because without
Without those specific minerals, the electrical signals in the muscles misfire, leading to severe cramping and even irregular heartbeats.
Wow.
They also need specific macronutrients, readily available liquid carbohydrates for immediate cellular energy, and proteins to jumpstart muscle repair.
Yeah.
You are quite literally refueling and repairing a biological machine that has been running on fumes.
Which is fascinating when it works in a standard city response. What happens when standard rehab tents and electrolyte drinks just aren't going to cut it?
Right, the extreme scenarios.
Exactly. We're talking about massive chemical spills or remote wildfires miles from the nearest road, or environments where the climate itself is actively trying to kill you. This geographical and environmental barrier forces us to look at this incredible technological escalation.
Hazardous materials, hazmat incidents, and confined space rescues completely change the mechanics of rehab. Let's look at hazmat. Responders aren't just wearing heavy cloth gear.
No, they are sealed completely inside chemical-resistant suits.
Right. They are breathing through self-contained breathing apparatus, or SCBAs, or sometimes they use powered air purifying respirators, or PPRs.
Let's explain what a PPR actually is, because it sounds lightweight, but it's really not.
Not at all.
It's a motorized blower unit, usually strapped to their back or waist, attached to a heavy battery pack, pushing filtered air into a completely sealed hood. So they are dragging this extra mechanical weight while encased in a non-breathable plastic suit.
Yeah,
They're essentially marinating in their own sweat.
that's a gross but very accurate way to put it. And the most dangerous part of a hazmat operation often isn't the chemical spill itself, it's the process of getting out of the suit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When they are physically exhausted and their heart rate is maxed out, they can't just unzip the suit and walk into a rehab tent to breathe fresh air. The outside of their suit is coated in lethal chemicals.
Right, so they have to decontaminate first.
Exactly. They have to process through intense multi-stage decontamination corridors. This means standing in wash pools while a team slowly scrubs them down with specialized solutions, rinsing, and systematically removing layers of gear without exposing the responder's skin or lungs to the toxins.
That sounds grueling.
It's a slow, methodical process that happens exactly when the responder is most desperate for immediate relief. The psychological and physical discipline required to endure that is just immense.
Then you have the sheer logistical nightmare of remote terrain. Think about wildland firefighters deep in a remote mountainous forest canopy. You can't just drive a rehab ambulance up a mountain trail.
No, you can't.
And the fire creates its own unpredictable weather systems, making helicopter drops too dangerous due to smoke and thermal updrafts. So they are increasingly using unmanned aerial vehicles. Drones.
Which is such a smart application of that technology.
It really is. These drones can fly low, utilizing thermal imaging to locate hot, isolated crews through the thick smoke, and precisely drop heavy hydration packs, electrolytes, and medical supplies right onto the fire line.
That's incredible.
The source even explores the emerging use of robotic-assisted rehabilitation devices, essentially automated pneumatic compression boosts and massage tools. They bring them to the front lines to force lactic acid out of responders' legs so they can keep hiking.
It's a brilliant example of how technology bridges the gap when traditional logistics fail. But, technology isn't the only solution. Adapting to the environment also means looking at global cultural strategies.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Right, because the European Union has a collaborative system called the European Civil Protection Mechanism, or EUCPM. And Europe encompasses a massively diverse climate, so their rehab protocols have to be incredibly flexible. And what's brilliant is how they integrate deeply ingrained cultural practices into their medical triage.
I loved this section of the book. Take Northern Europe, specifically Scandinavia. They are operating in extreme freezing conditions where hypothermia, frostbite, and the loss of fine motor skills are the primary physiological threats.
Right. So what do?
Their solution: traditional saunas.
It's so cool.
They literally deploy mobile saunas to incident scenes. Biologically, the intense enveloping heat of a sauna rapidly dilates the blood vessels, drawing warm blood back from the core out to the freezing extremities, rewarming the responders far faster than blankets ever could.
And contrast that with Southern Europe, the Mediterranean region, where extreme heat stress is the lethal threat.
Completely opposite problem.
Exactly. In those regions, they officially integrate the concept of the siesta into their large-scale emergency rehab schedules.
That's amazing.
They structure mandatory extended rest periods into their operational plans during the absolute hottest peak solar radiation parts of the day. They align their emergency response with the natural circadian rhythms and established heat acclimatization of the local culture.
It's brilliant because it builds trust. If you force a Scandinavian crew to sit in a standard American-style heated tent, I mean, it might work, but it feels clinical.
Right, it doesn't feel natural.
But giving them a sauna feels familiar. It feels culturally appropriate. They're much more likely to actually utilize rehab and break that stigma we talked about earlier if the recovery method is something they already trust in their daily lives.
It proves that effective emergency medicine isn't just about clinical vitals. It's about understanding the psychology and the culture of the human beings wearing the uniform.
So with all this advanced technology and global coordination, it might sound like rehab has unlimited resources, like a blank check.
I wish.
But the reality on the ground is fraught with tight budgets, logistical hurdles, and some truly complex ethical choices.
Resources are always finite, particularly in the chaotic early hours of a large-scale disaster. And one of the most surprising logistical realities involves the actual transportation of these rehab units.
Oh, right.
There is this deeply counterintuitive protocol known as the lights and sirens policy.
Yeah, most departments explicitly restrict their rehab units from responding with their lights and sirens on, what they call driving code 3.
Which sounds absolutely crazy at first.
It does. It's an emergency. There's a massive fire. Why aren't they rushing to the scene?
But the underlying logic is entirely based on risk management. Rehab is for the responders, not the immediate civilian victims trapped in the fire.
Right.
Driving a massive, heavy apparatus at high speeds through intersections poses a massive safety risk to the public. You don't want to cause a fatal civilian traffic accident just to get a resting tent and some water to a fire scene 5 minutes faster.
The only exception to that restriction is a careful risk-benefit analysis, right?
Makes-
Like, if the rehab unit is traveling a vast distance to a prolonged incident, and the extreme heat or freezing cold makes the delay a direct, life-threatening risk to the responders already on scene, then command might authorize a Code 3 response.
That's the only time. But honestly, that logistical headache is simple math compared to the ethical dilemmas these rehab officers face on the ground.
So what does this all mean? Let's look at those ethical dilemmas from the perspective of the listener. Imagine you are involved in a mass casualty event, like a severe pileup on the highway.
Okay, setting the scene.
You're injured, sitting on the curb, waiting for an ambulance. But you watch a paramedic walk right past you to assess a firefighter who just looks tired.
Oof, yeah.
From the civilian perspective, that feels completely backwards. But this is a concept called dual loyalties. Do you use your limited medical supplies to treat the critically exhausted first responder so they can go back in and save 3 more civilians? Or do you treat the one civilian who is already hurt?
It's an agonizing triage decision. But the entire chain of survival depends on the responders. If the rescue team collapses, everyone waiting for rescue is lost.
That's a heavy burden.
It is. But the ethical friction doesn't stop there. It extends deeply into the legal frameworks of emergency medicine. The rehab officer is acting as a medical provider, which means they are bound by strict patient confidentiality laws, like HIPAA in the United States.
Right.
But simultaneously, they are operating as a subordinate within the incident command system.
I think the best way to understand this conflict is to think about a professional football team.
Okay, I like this.
Imagine the incident commander is the head coach, and the rehab officer is the team doctor. The head coach desperately needs to know if their star quarterback is healthy enough to go back into the game.
Makes sense.
But the team doctor has doctor-patient confidentiality. If the doctor finds out the quarterback's blood pressure is dangerously high and they are nearing a heart attack, the quarterback might argue, "I'm fine, put me back in."
Right. The player has the right to refuse treatment through informed consent.
Exactly. But the coach needs to know the truth before sending them onto the field.
That analogy perfectly encapsulates the tension. This raises an important question because the incident commander needs to know if their team is physically fit to enter a collapsing structure. If a firefighter refuses treatment and rehab, how does the medical officer balance the responder's absolute right to medical privacy against the commander's critical need to know if their team is about to suffer a fatal cardiac event inside a burning building?
It is an incredibly delicate balance.
Very delicate.
So how do they navigate that? Because they can't just break federal privacy laws, but they also can't let a firefighter walk into a death trap.
The standard practice is that the medical officer advocates for the patient's privacy while protecting the operational team. This means the medical officer will not disclose the specific medical details.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they won't tell command the exact blood pressure or oxygen numbers without consent, but they can, and actually must, give command a binary operational status. They inform the commander only whether the individual is cleared for duty or unfit for duty.
So they keep it vague but definitive.
Exactly. But navigating those heated conversations in the middle of a chaotic life or death crisis requires a tremendous amount of ethical training.
So when you strip away the acronyms, the medical terminology, and the gear, what does this all mean for you, the listener, sitting at home or driving to work?
It means everything.
It really does. It means that your local fire department, your paramedics, your community's overall ability to survive a disaster is completely dependent on how well we rehabilitate the people we call for help. If the rehab operation fails, the rescue operation fails.
It is the absolute foundation of community resilience. We are asking everyday people to perform superhuman, physiologically devastating tasks. And as our environments become more extreme, as wildfires burn hotter and longer, as severe weather events become more frequent, the physiological toll on these responders is only going to amplify.
It's a sobering thought.
Our systems of care, our technology, and our logistical support have to evolve just as quickly as the threats they are facing.
It is a realization that even the most resilient heroes require a scientifically optimized sanctuary to repair their armor. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
We really hope it has provided you with a completely new lens through which to view the immense, complex reality of emergency response and a deeper appreciation for the vital, highly technical work that happens just out of the spotlight on the sideline.
The unsung heroes on the sideline.
Exactly.